I think the risks, let's say, are not clear. From a marketing perspective, yeah, I think the rule book is out basically for large language models at the moment. The currency is data in exchange for revenue, really, which was nothing's free, right? So that sounds good, but having the ability to personalize to a certain level, but you have to give something away. You have to give data, you have to give knowledge, you have to give. From a marketing point of view, I mean, it's tremendously exciting times, really. You've got this whole bunch of data. You've got AI, which can research, analyze, give you results upon data like never before.
This week, Andrew Levers. Andrew, I'm going to give a bit of background. Brand and marketing expert. He has an extremely impressive track record of helping companies grow and sell for hundreds of millions of pounds. And your expertise with those companies, I believe, was in financial services technology. Do you want to elaborate a bit more?
Yeah, largely around financial services tech, really. So around the financial planning, wealth management and financial markets space. And that's really focused upon CRM systems, point of sale systems, and the connecting technology between those front end and back end systems, really. So it sounds very grand, but...
well, I mean, one thing that I think it's important to say why are we doing this, and all the episodes we've done so far, and why this particular episode I think is going to be very important. We're here to help understand and communicate what is happening with AI, where it could go, what are the upsides, what are the downsides, and bringing in different expertise. So far we've had Professor Song, who leads the largest AI university in the UK, possibly Europe. We've had a leading educator, how to connect business and enterprise into the education system, which is experiencing huge changes at the moment. And one of the top lawyers whose expertise is in around technology, contracting, intellectual property. So your experience in technology, rapidly growing companies, startups through to exits, I think is absolutely relevant. And I think part of what I'd love to really delve into today is imagining how would we look at this if we were to remove the phrase AI.
AI is quite an unusual product, let's say. Its success has been about timing. I mean, because traditionally a textbook way to launch a company or a product would be you would do your market research, find your audience, build a product which has benefits which you hope will suit those perceived needs of those audience, create a really powerful value proposition and execute a communications plan. That's typically how you would do it. I think with AI specifically, let's talk chat GPT for instance, that's just not happened that way and didn't need to happen that way. And I think they launched that business or that product by engaging some really influential people and organizations and telling stories in a really engaging way in canned demonstrations, which, as I say, they seeded out to influential people and they let the internet do the rest, really. And I think the product itself, from a usability point of view, is not complicated, which is a massive win, right? If you're launching something which is complicated, then that takes time, right? That takes education and things. But with ChatGPT, for instance, as a consumer, once I've heard about that and somebody's told me, oh, you should try this fantastic AI, it can help you with emails, it can write you letters, it can help you be funny and tell some jokes. And as soon as you have a go, that's amazing. It's really easy to engage with. And so why would it not take off, really? And that's what I mean about timing. I think the market was ready. There's a hunger for technology and new technology amongst all of us, really. And I think it was timing.
If we changed the optics of how we consider this, this probably has much more similarity with an election and political parties than it does with the traditional route of innovating, taking something to market, addressing problem solving. There's a promise, and that promise is predominantly efficiency and convenience. And there's no doubt it does provide that, but as we're beginning to discover, there are risks to that. But the narrative hasn't caught up. Maybe there's a reason for that. And when I pose it in the position of an election, if a political party tells us, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to tell you everything that you want to hear, the risk is always what they're not saying. Like they're going to raise taxes, they're going to take the reduced child benefit, there's all manner of different things. So they're talking to an audience on a very superficial cell. Elaborate on that. What's your perspective there?
AI, or let's call it, let's classify AI really, because obviously there's different types. There's large language models, LLMs, ChatGPT, for instance. And I think it's been such a rapid explosion, really. And as I say, such benefits to the end user. I think the risks, let's say, are not clear, or certainly not being talked about or exposed. I just mean about risk to me as a consumer or an organization in terms of what am I giving them? What am I giving up, really? Because working on the basis that nothing's free, there has to be a trade-off. So for me, risk isn't, as I say, isn't about they're going to take, AI is going to take over humans. It's what am I giving up, really? And I think it's the same, very similar to social media. You classified it as in the political realm. I would say it's like social media as well, really. If you're trying to break in as a new social media startup, that'd be very, very difficult. So you have some incumbents, right? And it's very engaging, it's very easy to use, it's very entertaining, whatever buzz you get from and benefit you get from social media. But you're giving something up, right? So you're giving information about yourself in terms of the profile you've filled out. You're giving information up about your behavior on those platforms and what you talk about. And you're giving it up so the organization can turn that into sales opportunities and to market products and services to you. And I think we're at the stage with AI and certainly large language models where, again, I know there are paid versions, but I think as a user, I think there needs to be more talk about what are you giving up, really. For instance, the prompts that you put into large language models can tell an awful lot about you.
And this is a really fascinating point, because I personally find it frustrating that you will put a prompt together, it will return something, and they'll think, well, I like that, that's interesting, that's okay, I'm not sure about that. So you amend, you ask again, but then it'll give you something entirely new. And you say, well, yeah, that's better, but now that's not right.
Yeah.
So it continuously kind of pushes you to give what is effectively knowledge, know-how, and expertise. Now, the lawyer that we had on, Raoul, very smart guy, pointed out, because you mentioned one thing here, so we would tie the two together. The majority of websites are in the public domain, obviously, but the terms and conditions stipulate that that information is not available to be used for private organizations for commercial use. Companies are earning money off data which is questionable of the legality. But if you took away the term AI, these current deals would never be allowed because it's creating mass data leakage. People are uploading company information so they can get convenience to get something drawn down as a return from a prompt. And the question is, where does that go? So if it goes to a private cloud or within a private computer, private network, then of course that's safe. And that's the typical rules, because you don't give your bank details away, your HR information. You would never, as a company, share that information externally. Even if it's on the cloud, it's on a private cloud. What we're talking about here is incredible data leakage into a public cloud. But even still, the term public cloud tends to be one of three, now four with DeepSeek. So you as a company can provide, you can use it, get your team to use it. Someone completely random somewhere else could be trying to look for the same insights, and it's in that big sea of information. So you've inadvertently given away your knowledge and know-how for another company to use, which could be a competitor. There is no way that would ever be allowed in a typical contracting sense, which goes back to the point, what is not being talked about and why is it not being talked about? And I think we've discussed personally the idea that this is, you think you've referred to it before as the race to the bottom.
Well, the race to the bottom spurs really two outcomes. The first outcome is if you hit the bottom, it's the end of you, and as an organisation, you've lost out to the competitor, really. Or it means you have to diversify. And you diversify into different products. Advertising, for instance. And that's what I was saying earlier about, are we all aware of what we're giving up, really?
And what is the currency of advertising?
The currency is you give data.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The
data aspect.
Yeah, the currency is data in exchange for revenue, really, because obviously advertising, you would hope, drives revenue for those organisations that's running it.
The narrative has been set. It's tied to an objective where a handful of players are pushing to achieve market share. There are risks. Those risks are becoming more and more and more apparent. And again, from a personal standpoint, the retail market, we are much, much, much happier than a company, because a company is bound by much more wide-ranging and strict legal frameworks where they have a duty of care and responsibility. The GDPR, all these other elements come in. You become a data processor, you're dealing with other people's data, so it becomes almost held to a completely different account.
From a marketing perspective, I think the rule book is out basically for large language models at the moment.
But I think communication comes into a really important point, because if we're only hearing one story and that story is agenda driven.
If I just go back to my point, really, which is where I think we're on the beginning of this AI journey, right? All of us, whether we're consumers, companies, whether you're a technologist, whatever, we're just on the journey. And we're all excited about it. There's lots of people talking about risk and the big risks, but largely speaking, including myself, enthralled by it, right? Excited by it and using it a lot, and more and more in our lives we're using it. And I think there will come a time shortly when those everyday risks will come to the fore, really. The marketing hype, let's say, those positive messages will start to be eroded slightly about what are you giving, back to the point about what are you giving away, really, and what are those downsides? Are you giving away information that you really wouldn't want to give away? Certainly as an organisation, I'm sure many organisations are implementing certain regulations and what you can and can't do about using open large language models, and quite rightly they should, really. And I think it comes down to those things which haven't yet been exposed yet about large language models, for instance, which is trust and truth. LGM is founded upon, as you know, you created it really, so truth and trust. So the information you're, first of all, it's safe and secure in terms of the information you're feeding it, but the information you're getting out can be trusted, it's validated, it's credible, it's accurate.
Well, I think there's a huge difference between empirical and subjective.
Yeah.
We've discussed it personally before. And when you change the context and you put something that we consider, oh, well, we should trust it, even the fact that the lawyer had said with the post office, the postmaster scandal, that the law still to this day, information from an IT system is correct. The burden is sort of 70-30 or 90-10 on you to prove that system doesn't tell the truth. And that can be very expensive, very time consuming, and still have a huge amount of resistance. Where is the bar that we say, hold on, this must be correct? For example, your bank account. We lived in a world where bank accounts were subjective, like the margin of error on a large language model, which is you can have different varying degrees of probability, but you don't know. The way the technology with transformers works, you don't know. It's a black box. And imagine pop into the ATM and, well, today it's roughly £100, a few zeros different, or maybe we'll interpret, today you're rich. What does that mean? Well, your bank balance could be completely different depending on your interpretation of rich, which probably goes back to what you earn, your socioeconomic background, very many different number of things. And effectively, I personally believe that AI is about scale. It's about creativity on one side, the human experience, but that must be protected, and scale to undertake understood tasks using understood data to enable critical decision making on a massive scale. Actually just get that data in context in a trusted manner and put the true human brain power enhanced by AI to achieve better results. Actually, the productivity, the benefit across the board would be extremely good. But again, that's a different type of AI. So the narrative being hogged and owned by one particular type of AI, which we know has flaws, is, well, I think it's a byproduct of the circumstance of, as you say, a race to the bottom.
Yeah, and again, back to timing really, and back to the point that we're on the start of this AI journey really, and it will evolve, right? I think large language models have come into the public domain, and that's lots of people think AI, that's what AI is, but it's clearly much wider than that, and will develop into much greater and bigger things. And I think the use of large language models will diminish in terms of their prominence, really.
But where do you think the future is going to go?
From a marketing point of view or from an AI point of view?
Both.
From a marketing point of view, I mean, it's tremendously exciting times, really. You've got this whole bunch of data. You've got AI, which can research, analyze, give you results upon data like never before. From a marketing perspective, it's hugely exciting times. Personally, from a AI point of view, again, I just think it's we're in the start of an amazing period in humanity.
Now, how about a different angle, which is something Professor Song was very passionate about, the human element. We're already seeing technology which is, as of yet, not released, which will enable humans to interact with artificial intelligence, to really excel, and the ability to control artificial intelligence, as opposed to what it looks like now, which people aren't thinking about because they haven't experienced what it's like to be able to control things and orchestrate. They can't control, because those are the two trajectories. One includes man and mankind, humanity, and the other, well, that's, I think, where the ideological risks are ending up. But that also serves certain organizations. And I think this other approach is potentially hugely exciting, where we can truly democratize AI. So an individual artist could create unlike ever before, but with everything not being homogenized and all of the same, where uniqueness can actually come out. The same will then apply to music and filmmaking and animation and ideas and creative writing. I mean, that I find extremely exciting.
I mean, you put all of that into context of a marketeer, really, and marketeers have strived since marketing was ever a thing, really, to personalize things, personalize messages, right? Personalize communication. And we found various different ways to personalize lots of things, but only to a certain level, really. And again, I think AI has that from a brand and marketing perspective to get really personal. That's where good marketing is, right? What are those buttons which push customers really? And I think AI potentially has the potential to become more personal and help marketeers and organizations to become personal. But again, back to our original point, which was nothing's free, right? So that sounds good, but having the ability to personalize to a certain level, but you have to give something away. You have to give data. You have to give knowledge. You have to give personality about yourself, really. And I think as consumers and organisations, we just need to be aware of that.
So effectively, the really important narrative which will come up through listening and through observing is, in order to protect what we value, we can't keep giving everything away.
I think we've got to know stuff. I think we've got to know more about AI. We've got to know more about the risks, what we're giving up. And again, I don't mean risk to humanity or whatever. I mean risks to what are you giving up as an individual in terms of information or value, really. What value are you giving? And because we are giving some value, really. And I think we all need to learn more about AI in terms of how can I put it? I don't want to say risks, because I say risk classifiers, it's going to kill us all off. I don't mean that, really. I mean,
it's the costs, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the value cost, really. I think.
I mean, we've talked about with other guests, fast food, convenient, lovely, but it comes at a risk. If you eat fast food all your life, well, you're probably going to have a negative health outcome. On the odd occasion, of course, fast food's very convenient. It's great. But there is a risk, which everyone has a different risk appetite. So it's really going in with your eyes open. And I think currently with a lot of things, we're going in with our eyes closed. And any subject which is new, like any great exploration, there were tragedies along the way. It's a world of discovery. But is it a democratic world of discovery? Is it about people having expeditions, or is it the market share approach?
Yeah, I think it's the latter. I think it's business, isn't it?
I mean,
it's big tech business, really, isn't it?
Yeah, this is where I go back to it's more like an election. We don't listen to politicians and say everything they say is true. Obviously, they've never told a lie. And there's no agenda behind them telling us anything. We absolutely know there is. And sort of fine. We take it with a pinch of salt. But is that the position everyone realizes they're in? This is very different. It seems very calculated. And I think if you, as soon as you begin to look under the rocks a little bit, you realize, yeah, there is incredible potential. But how much is incredible potential and how much is messaging?
The only thing I would say about messaging is whatever communications have been put out there so far, it's all been positive. And as from a marketeer's point of view, that's clearly where you would focus. Why would you highlight the not so good things, really? Just common sense, right? You don't have to be a marketing expert to know that, really. And I think we haven't seen a lot of that. And I think we are going to see more of that, really.
Well, I think this is where there needs to be a place for a fair and balanced view.
Mm.
To say, if we're getting sold something, in many ways, obviously, we're going to be sold the upside.
Yeah.
But if all we, given it is so new, all we hear is the upside, where is the place? I mean, this is what we want to do with the talks, not through opinion, but through subject matter expertise to say, well, of course, if you're selling something, you're selling the upside, you're not going to sell the downside. If you're a lawyer and you're looking at protecting a client, you're going to look at the facts of the situation. The facts of the situation are looking rather suspect. And then looking at the ramifications in education. And if we're educating our young people and moving to, the suggestion was AI could write the coursework, it could teach the lessons, it could mark the homework. But if it's so generalized, and of course I understand the idea of personalized, but we're not really seeing the capability of the personalized element just yet, because it's more, there are technical reasons behind it, there are data sharing issues behind it, there are very kind of generalization factors about it. The idea that, if we all use ChatGPT, we all have the same writing style. I mean, we've literally seen that, where I've put something together for a project, sent it to one of the team, and they've said, "Oh, look, you have the same writing style as my boyfriend."
Yeah, right.
And I know he uses ChatGPT all the time. That's not necessarily a compliment. Now, are we genericizing the world? So there are opportunities in understanding, well, how can we recapture the individualness of people? We don't want to become all the same.
Yeah, I mean, that comes down to the value you're giving up, back to those prompts that you put into LLMs. That's your personality, what you're telling it to say or what you're telling it to do, really. And at the moment, that's as sophisticated as it gets. I say at the moment. And I'm sure there will come a time in the near future when we'll all have our own personalized AI, and it will mimic our characteristics, our personality traits or whatever as well, really. So we're on the start of that, I think. We talked about risks and what you're giving up as well. I think it's probably important to also understand that large language models are just one small element of AI, and I think it's probably is a large language model going to kill us all? No, I don't think it is it, right? But some other AI might, right? Some other whatever it is, and singularity AI or whatever I think the term is, for instance. So that's back to risk and reward, really. What's the risk I'm giving these large language models? I'm giving them a bit of my data, right? And I'm helping them to learn, and sure, they might end up creating some products to market to me in the future. But actually, do you know what? It's saving me an hour of my day writing emails, or it's saving me a day of my life writing a presentation, for instance. And so that's more than worth it. Thank you very much.
The consumer basis, that's where they're giving information away. Companies are way more cautious about it, and they leverage that because that's how these middlemen monetize it. You give the data and you get something you're willing to give away, and companies tend to buy off this thin sliver in between, Google, Facebook, whatever. Now, corporates, the bar is so much higher. The responsibility is higher. You have chief security officers, chief compliance officers, you've got regulated industries.
Yeah, well, a large part of my background is working within with the financial services, so highly regulated, really. And the technology implemented within financial services, whilst it did many things, helped, for instance, help customers get better financial advice, or help them buy things quick, or help them to keep track of their portfolios or their wealth, etc. One thing, a fundamental of financial services technology, is that it has to be able to back up decisions of why, let's say, a financial advisor or a wealth manager has made certain decisions. So in other words, auditable, really. So if the regulator, and again, I don't think this is just synonymous with financial services, but if a regulator says to an organization, why have you made that particular decision, or why have you sold that product to that customer, the technology is there to help you say, well, this is why we made that decision, really. And I think AI is no different, really. If organizations are going to use AI, certainly in a regulated environment, and we're not talking large language models here, we're talking different types of AI, ones that, for instance, can help with decision making, critical thinking, help with research, help with development, for instance, then those systems are going to need to be auditable, and the regulators going to along, how did you make that decision? So organizations are going to have to be able to interrogate those AI models to say, we did that because of that, really. And I think that's a challenge for AI as we have at the moment. And I think that's where enterprise AI is a challenge for enterprise AI. And I know that's one we're addressing within GAEA, for instance.
Yeah, I mean, the concept of trust and truth is not optional.
No.
And I think that's the key. And again, it ties into legal frameworks, responsibilities, compliance issues. Even if something good happens or something bad happens, and you say, how did that transpire? How do we ensure that we understand how to capitalize on that in the future, or reduce risk and create resilience? Well, that requires you understanding the data. That means you need to go back in time, you need to assess the information, you need to expand upon it, and then you also need to be able to predict or recognize, more to the point, predictions can come, but recognize the facts. And given the arrow of time is always moving, a prediction at some point becomes historical data. Everything will become historical data at some point. And to really understand and have almost chains of thought which are verifiable is going to be absolutely critical. And that's really where, when you understand that, you're setting a bar, you're setting a standard, which, to be honest, is no different to the standard of pre-AI enterprise technology.
Yeah.
But with the advent of AI, it's like everyone's going, ooh, forget that. And they've allowed all of these really fundamental critical elements to almost be, oh, don't worry about them. Well, actually you should, because the reason you worry about things like that, worry about whether you can trust information, is because decisions are made off the back of it.
I mean, you can't regulate the black box, right? No. Which is what's trying to, which is a journey that we could try, that we could. Are we going down that journey at the moment, really? And so to say, you have to be, enterprises have to be able to implement AI in which they can make, in which decisions that are made off the back of that technology is completely audible and transparent.
Yeah,
That's the challenge.
Well, I've seen the GCHQ upcoming guidelines or guidelines for upcoming regulation, where it classifies different types of AI.
Right.
But again, this is fascinating and interesting because it's based on rational common sense. And if every country is almost in an arms race and it's everyone for themselves from a country perspective, then it makes perfect sense that these things will have to be addressed. But I think there's a massive disparity between the proposed regulation, the actual upcoming regulation, and the understanding of why and what is actually being sold. And I think that's going to be a really sharp coming together over the next 6 months. But in doing so, I think that's where we'll see fantastic technologies come to the fore and a change in attitude, like everything in life. If people are not educated, how can they form an opinion?
Yeah.
Which is, again, the point of GAEA Talks. Let's have the conversation. Let's bring the people on. And let's stimulate some thought for people to think about it. So,
yeah, I think one of your previous guests said about if you get your information from BBC and CNN, you're getting just a message, really. You're getting a summarised view, view of everything. And you should explore podcasts like this, or talks like this, or articles or papers like this, to really understand what we're engaging with, really, as organisations and consumers.
Yeah, I mean, everything we buy, we'd want to test drive a car before we bought it. We'd want to know the specs of a computer before we bought it. It's completely normal, rational behaviour in everything that we do. Yet here, for this small period of time, people have forgotten the basics, it seems. But they will come around and then, look, if people make decisions and they're happy with X, Y, and Z, fine. But are they walking into it with their eyes open or closed? And hopefully we help open some eyes and people can contribute, and this will end up somewhere interesting. It's definitely going to be interesting.
We're on the start of something amazing. I'm convinced, and I'm very excited by it.
Excellent. Right, how'd you leave us?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.